Introduction. Welcome, dear listener. Find yourself in a comfortable position, allowing your body to settle into complete rest. Let your eyes gently close or soften your gaze. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose and release it softly through your mouth. Again, breathing in peace, breathing out tension. Tonight, we journey together through the gentle wisdom of Buddhist teachings. These are stories passed down through centuries, tales of monks and masters, of students and seekers, of ordinary people who discovered extraordinary peace. Each story carries within it a seed of wisdom, a doorway to deeper rest, a path to the stillness that already exists within you. There is no need to concentrate, no need to remember, no need to try. Simply allow these words to wash over you like gentle waves upon a shore. If sleep comes, welcome it. If your mind wanders, that is natural. Return gently to the sound of these words or drift peacefully into the soft darkness of rest. Let us begin.
Story 1. The Monk and the Strawberry. In a time long ago, in the mountain regions of ancient China, there lived a young monk named Shen Xu. He was devoted to his practice, rising before dawn each day to sit in meditation, spending his days in mindful work and study. One morning, Shen Xu was walking along a mountain path, returning from gathering herbs for the monastery's medicine hall. The path was narrow, carved into the side of the mountain, with steep cliffs rising on one side and falling away on the other. The morning mist still clung to the valleys below, soft and white like clouds descended to earth. As Shen Xu walked, absorbed in contemplation of a teaching he had received the day before, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold, a low, rumbling growl. He turned slowly and saw, emerging from the mist behind him, a tiger. The great cat's eyes were fixed on him, its muscles rippling beneath its striped coat. Shen Xu's heart began to race. He knew he could not outrun a tiger. The path ahead was too long, too exposed. Behind him, the tiger crouched, ready to spring. Without thinking, Shen Xu ran forward, but his foot caught on a root and he tumbled over the edge of the cliff. His hands grasped wildly and caught hold of a thick vine growing from the cliff face. He hung there, suspended between heaven and earth. Above him, the tiger prowled at the edge, looking down. Below him, hundreds of feet of empty air ended in jagged rocks, his arms already beginning to shake from the strain of holding his weight. Then Shen Xu noticed something else. 2 mice, one white and one black, had emerged from a crack in the cliff face. They were gnawing at the vine that held him, their tiny teeth working steadily through the tough fibers. Shen Xu understood. Above him, death. Below him, death. And the very thing that held him suspended between these 2 deaths was being slowly destroyed. There was no escape, no solution, no way out. In that moment, something in Shen Xu released. The desperate grasping of his mind ceased. He hung there, simply present with what was. And in that presence, he noticed something he had not seen before. Growing from a small crevice in the rock, just within reach of his hand, was a wild strawberry plant, and on it one perfect, ripe strawberry, glistening with morning dew, illuminated by a shaft of sunlight breaking through the mist. Shen Xu reached out with one hand, plucked the strawberry, and placed it in his mouth. It was the sweetest thing he had ever tasted. The flavor burst on his tongue, complex and perfect, containing the whole of summer in that single berry. He closed his eyes and savored it completely. The tiger above, the rocks below, the mice gnawing at the vine, all faded into the background. There was only this moment, this taste, this perfect strawberry. When Shen Shu opened his eyes, something had shifted. The tiger was gone, wandered off to hunt elsewhere. The mice had stopped their gnawing and disappeared back into their hole. And Shen Shu, with arms strengthened by the strange peace that had come over him, was able to pull himself back up onto the path. He walked slowly back to the monastery, the taste of the strawberry still on his tongue. When he arrived, his master was sitting in the courtyard, drinking tea in the morning sun. "Master," Shen Shu said, bowing low, "I have just had the strangest experience." The old master looked up, his eyes twinkling with knowing humor. "Tell me, Shen Shu, how did the strawberry taste?" Shen Shu smiled. "It was the sweetest I have ever known." The master nodded. "That strawberry is always there, Shen Shu, in every moment, in every circumstance, no matter how dire. The question is only whether we are present enough to taste it." That evening, as Shen Shu sat in meditation, he understood. Life is always presenting us with tigers and cliffs and gnawing mice. The circumstances of our lives, the dangers we face, the inevitable approach of death itself. These are the conditions of existence. We cannot make them disappear. But in each moment there is also the strawberry, the small perfection available right here, right now, the taste of tea, the warmth of sun on skin, the sound of rain, the breath moving in and out. Each moment contains both the tiger and the strawberry. The practice is to not deny the tiger, but also to not miss the strawberry. Shen Shu lived many more years, eventually becoming a teacher himself. And to students who came to him anxious about the future or tormented by the past, he would ask simply, "Can you taste the strawberry in this moment?" Rest now in this understanding. Whatever tigers prowl in your life, whatever cliffs you hang above, whatever slow diminishment gnaws at the vines that hold you, the strawberry is here. This breath, this moment of rest, this gentle darkness that holds you now. Taste it fully. Let yourself sink into the sweetness of simply being here, now, exactly as you are. Breathe deeply. Release. Rest.
Story 2. The Temple of Silence. High in the mountains of Tibet, there once stood a monastery known as the Temple of Silence. It was said that no words had been spoken within its walls for 300 years. The monks there communicated only through gestures, through the work of their hands, through the language of presence itself. A young woman named Doma had traveled many weeks to reach this temple. She had left behind a life of noise, a life where words had begun to feel hollow and meaningless. She had talked and talked, trying to explain herself, to be understood, to make sense of her life. But the more she spoke, the more confused she became. The more she tried to capture truth in words, the more truth seemed to slip away. She arrived at the temple gates as the sun was setting, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of rose and gold. An elderly monk answered her knock, his face creased with the gentle lines of long laughter and deep peace. He looked at her with eyes that saw everything, and without a word he opened the gate wider and gestured for her to enter. Doma bowed and stepped inside. The monk led her through silent corridors to a small room. It contained only a sleeping mat, a cushion for meditation, and a small window that looked out over the mountains. The monk bowed and left, closing the door softly behind him. Doma sat on the cushion and looked out at the mountains. The silence was so complete it seemed to have texture, weight, presence. For the first time in years, she could hear the sound of her own breathing. She could hear her heartbeat. She could hear the small creaks and sighs of her body settling. At first, the silence was uncomfortable. Her mind raced with words, with conversations she replayed, with things she wanted to say. The silence seemed to amplify her thoughts, making them louder and more insistent. She wanted to speak, to break the silence, to fill it with something. But there was no one to speak to, and gradually, having no outlet, the words began to slow. Like a stream that has been dammed, the flow of her mental chatter began to pool and settle. Days passed. Doma fell into the rhythm of the monastery. She arose before dawn and sat in meditation with the other monks. They moved together to the meditation hall in perfect silence, their footsteps soft on the stone floors. When the bell rang, they sat. When it rang again, they rose. The work of the day was done in silence. Doma was assigned to help in the garden, where an ancient nun with hands gnarled like tree roots taught her through demonstration how to tend the vegetables, how to pull weeds without harming the soil, how to water with care and attention. The old nun's silence was different from mere quiet. It was full, alive, communicative. Through the way she touched the plants, the way she knelt in the dirt, the way her face softened when a seedling sprouted, she taught Doma more about life and care than 1,000 lectures could have conveyed. Meals were taken in silence, each person fully present with the food, with the act of eating, with the miracle of nourishment. Doma found that when she ate in silence, really tasting each bite, a simple bowl of rice and vegetables became a profound experience. She could taste the sunshine that had ripened the vegetables, the rain that had fed them, the hands that had planted and tended and harvested. Weeks passed, then months. Doma's mind, which had been so full of noise, began to clear. She discovered that beneath the constant chatter of thoughts was something else, a vast, spacious awareness, a stillness that had always been there, but which she had never noticed because she was too busy talking, too busy thinking, too filling every moment with words. In this stillness, she began to hear other things, the whisper of wind through pine needles, the distant call of a snow eagle, the sound of her own breath moving in and out, the tide of life itself flowing through her. One morning, as she sat in meditation, something profound happened. The boundary between herself and the silence dissolved. She was not Doma sitting in silence. She was the silence itself. The silence that held the mountains, that held the temple, that held all things. The silence that existed before words, before thoughts, before the self that thinks and speaks. In that silence, she understood. Words were useful, yes, they had their place, but they were like fingers pointing to the moon. They could indicate truth, gesture toward it, but they could never capture it. Truth was not something that could be spoken. It could only be lived, breathed, embodied. She opened her eyes and tears streamed down her face, not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. The burden of constantly trying to explain, to justify, to understand through words had been released. She could simply be, simply exist, simply rest in the vast silence that held all things. That evening, as the community gathered for evening meditation, Doma looked around at the faces of the monks and nuns who sat with her. Each face was peaceful, present, alive. They communicated volumes in their silence. A smile, a nod, a hand placed gently on a shoulder. These gestures carried more genuine connection than most conversations she had ever had. After many years at the temple, Doma eventually returned to the world below. She carried the silence with her like a precious jewel. When she spoke, which she did when needed, her words came from a different place. They arose from the silence itself, and they carried the weight of that silence with them. People listened when she spoke, not because she said many things, but because each word was chosen with care, each word emerged from deep presence. But mostly Doma listened. She listened to others, not thinking about what she would say next, but truly listening from the silence within her, and people felt heard by her in a way they had never felt heard before, because she was not listening with her mind, constantly judging and categorizing and planning responses. She was listening with the silence itself, which could hold anything, which judged nothing, which simply received everything with spacious compassion. At night, before sleep, Doma would sit for a few moments in silence. She would feel the vast silence within and around her, the silence that held all words, all thoughts, all things, and in that silence she would rest. As you listen now, feel the silence between these words. Feel the silence that holds these words. Notice that the silence is not empty. It is full, full of peace, full of presence, full of the possibility of rest. Let yourself sink into that silence now. Let the words fade. Let your thoughts fade. Let everything fade into the gentle holding silence that has always been here, always will be here, always is here. Rest in the silence. Breathe in the silence. Let the silence carry you into sleep.
Story 3. The Master's Teacup. In a small village at the foot of Mount Hermit, there lived a Zen master named Kozen. His reputation for wisdom had spread throughout the region, and many students came to study with him. But Kozen accepted very few, and those he did accept often found his teaching methods strange and frustrating. One day, a wealthy merchant named Tanaka arrived at Kozen's simple house. Tanaka was a successful man, educated in the classics, well-traveled, articulate. He had studied Buddhism for many years and had read countless sutras. He came to Kozen hoping to polish his understanding, to add the master's insights to his already considerable knowledge. Kozen invited Tanaka to sit and offered to serve tea. The master's movements were slow and deliberate as he prepared the tea ceremony. He heated the water, warmed the pot, measured the tea leaves with careful attention. Each gesture was complete in itself, neither rushed nor delayed. Tanaka watched with barely concealed impatience. He had come for profound teachings, not to watch an old man make tea. But he remained polite, waiting for the ceremony to conclude so that the real teaching could begin. Finally, Kozen poured the tea. He filled Tanaka's cup and then continued pouring. The tea reached the brim of the cup and began to overflow, spilling onto the saucer, then onto the table, then dripping onto the floor. "Master," Tanaka cried out, "the cup is full. No more will go in." Kozen stopped pouring and looked at Tanaka with calm, clear eyes. "Like this cup," he said, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" Tanaka sat back, stunned. He had come as a student, but he had not come as an empty cup. He had come full of his own ideas about what Zen was, what enlightenment should look like, what he deserved to learn. There was no room for anything new, no space for genuine teaching. "Master," Tanaka said, his voice humbled, "I understand, but how does one empty the cup?" Kozen smiled. "You have already begun. Awareness that the cup is full is the first step. Now let us drink tea together and speak no more of emptying or filling. Let us simply be here, drinking tea." They sat in silence, sipping the tea.
And in that silence, Tanaka began to notice things: the warmth of the cup in his hands, the subtle, complex flavor of the tea, the sound of a bird outside the window, the quality of light in the room. His mind, which was usually so busy analyzing and categorizing, began to quiet. Each day Tanaka returned to Kozen's house, and each day they did simple things together. They swept the garden, they sat in silence, they prepared food, they drank tea. Kozen rarely spoke, and when he did, his words were simple and direct. Slowly, over weeks and months, Tanaka began to understand. The teaching was not in words or concepts, it was in the doing, in the being, in the simple presence with each moment. When he swept the garden, Kozen taught him to just sweep, not to sweep while thinking about business or Buddhism or anything else, just sweep. Be completely present with the sound of the broom on the stones, the movement of the body, the quality of the morning air. When he prepared food, Kozen taught him to just prepare food, to feel the texture of the vegetables, to listen to the sound of the knife on the cutting board, to smell the fragrance of the ingredients, to be fully present with each cut, each stir, each seasoning. Tanaka's mind, which had been so full, so crowded with concepts and ideas, began to have space in it, empty space. And in that empty space, something else could arise, not more knowledge, but direct experience, not understanding about life, but life itself lived fully in each moment. One evening, as they sat drinking tea in silence, Tanaka suddenly laughed. Kozen looked at him with raised eyebrows. "Master," Tanaka said, "I have traveled here every day for 6 months, and you have taught me nothing." "Nothing?" Kozen asked, his eyes twinkling. "Nothing," Tanaka confirmed, "and yet I have learned everything." Kozen nodded slowly. The cup that knows it is empty can be filled by every moment. The cup that thinks it is already full learns nothing, receives nothing new. You came here full, now you are empty. Or rather, now you understand that you were always empty, and that this emptiness is not a lack, but a fullness. It is space for life to arise, moment by moment, always fresh, always new. Tanaka bowed deeply. "Thank you, Master." "Thank the tea," Kozen replied. "Thank the cup. Thank your own willingness to empty. I have done nothing." Years later, when Tanaka was an old man himself, people would come to him for wisdom. They would ask him what he had learned from the great master Kozen, and Tanaka would smile and say, "He taught me to empty my cup. Everything else followed from that." As you rest now, feel the space within you. Your mind, like a cup, can be full of thoughts, worries, plans, memories. Feel what it is to let that cup empty. Not to force thoughts away, but simply to not hold on to them. Let each thought arise and pass, like tea poured through the cup. Don't try to capture it, to hold it, to fill yourself with it. Let it flow through, leaving the cup empty, spacious, ready for this moment exactly as it is. In this emptiness there is rest. In this emptiness there is peace. In this emptiness there is room for sleep to come naturally, gently, like water filling an empty cup. Empty your cup now. Empty your mind. Empty yourself into this moment, and let this moment fill you with its gentle darkness, its soft silence, its invitation to deep rest. Breathe, release, empty, rest.
Story 4. The River and the Stone. In ancient Japan, there was a young monk named Hakuin who struggled greatly with his meditation practice. He could sit for hours, but his mind would not settle. It churned constantly with thoughts, emotions, judgments, desires.
He watched other monks who seemed to sit in perfect peace, and he felt frustrated, even angry with himself. One day, his teacher sent him on a journey to deliver a message to another monastery several days' walk away. Hakuin set off, grateful for the break from his difficult practice, but also ashamed that he had not progressed as he felt he should. The path to the other monastery followed a river through a mountain valley. It was a beautiful walk, though Hakuin barely noticed the beauty. His mind was occupied with his failures, his inadequacy, his inability to meditate properly. On the second day of his journey, Hakuin stopped to rest beside the river. He sat on a large rock at the water's edge, removed his sandals, and let his tired feet soak in the cool water. The river was wide here, flowing strongly but smoothly around and over countless rocks and stones. As Hakuin sat, his mind still churning with self-judgment, he noticed a large stone in the middle of the river. Water flowed around it constantly, rushing past with considerable force, yet the stone sat there, unmoved, solid, present. It did not fight the water. It did not try to stop the flow. It simply allowed the water to flow around it, over it, past it. Hakuin watched the stone for a long time. The water never stopped flowing. It came endlessly from upstream, past the stone, and continued downstream. The stone did not get angry at the water for flowing. It did not judge itself for not stopping the water. It simply was, and the water simply flowed. Something shifted in Hakuin's understanding. His mind, with its endless stream of thoughts, was like this river. The thoughts came from upstream, from causes and conditions beyond his control. They flowed through his awareness and continued downstream, leading to further thoughts and actions. This flow was natural, constant, unstoppable. His mistake had been trying to stop the river, trying to force his mind to be still, to cease its natural flowing. This was like trying to stop the river with his hands. It was exhausting, frustrating, and ultimately impossible. But the stone showed another way. The stone did not stop the river. It let the river flow, and yet the stone remained still, unmoved, at peace in the center of the flow. Could he be like the stone? Could he let thoughts flow through his mind without being moved by them, without fighting them, without clinging to them, without judging them? Could he simply be present, aware, still in the center of whatever was arising? Hakuin sat by the river until the sun began to set, watching the water flow endlessly around the unchanging stone. Then he rose, bowed to the stone as to a teacher, and continued his journey. When he reached the other monastery and delivered his message, he was invited to stay for a few days. During his stay, he attended the evening meditation. As he sat, he remembered the stone. He let his thoughts flow like the river. He did not try to stop them. He did not fight them. He did not judge them. He simply remained still in the center of the flow, like the stone in the river. For the first time in years, Hakuin experienced genuine peace in meditation, not because his thoughts stopped, but because he stopped fighting his thoughts, not because his mind became silent, but because he found the stillness that existed regardless of noise. When Hakuin returned to his own monastery, his teacher immediately noticed the change in him. "You have found something," the old master said. "I found a stone in a river," Hakuin replied. The master smiled. "And the stone taught you what I could not?" "The stone taught me to stop trying to stop the river, to be still in the center of the flow, to let thoughts come and go without being moved by them." The master nodded. "This is good, but do not cling even to this understanding. Eventually, you will discover that you are not the stone. You are not separate from the river. You are the flowing itself. But that is a teaching for another day. For now, practice being the stone. Hakuin practiced this way for many years. Gradually, his meditation deepened. He learned to sit in perfect stillness even as thoughts and emotions flowed through him. He learned that he did not need to change his experience, to fix his mind, to become someone other than who he was. He only needed to be present, aware, still in the center of whatever was arising. In time, Hakuin became a teacher himself. When students came to him frustrated with their busy minds, he would often walk with them to a river. They would sit together, watching the water flow around the stones. And sometimes, without any words, the students would understand. One day, an elderly student asked Hakuin, "Master, I have practiced being like the stone in the river for many years. I can sit in stillness while thoughts flow, but is there something beyond this?" Hakuin smiled. "Tell me, when you look at the river now, what do you see?" The student looked at the flowing water. "I see the river flowing and the stone sitting still." "Look deeper," Hakuin encouraged. The student looked again. "I see that the stone and the river are both made of the same substance. Water has made the stone smooth over countless years. The stone shapes the flow of the river. They are different, but they are also one." "Good," Hakuin said. "And what else?" The student sat in silence for a long time, watching the river. Then his face brightened with understanding. "There is no stone. There is no river. There is only this moment, appearing as stone and river. The stone is not separate from the river. The river is not separate from the stone. And I am not separate from any of it. There is only this." Hakuin nodded slowly. "Now you understand. The stone and the river was a teaching for a particular time, but ultimate truth is beyond stone and river, beyond stillness and flow, beyond self and other. There is only this eternal now, appearing as all things, separate from nothing." As you rest now, feel yourself like the stone in the river of thoughts, of sensations, of experiences, flows constantly through your awareness. You do not need to stop this river. You do not need to fix it or change it. Simply rest in the center of the flow. Let thoughts come. Let them go. Like water flowing around a stone. You remain still, present, aware, not fighting, not clinging, simply being. And as you rest in this stillness, you may begin to notice that the boundary between you and the flow is not as solid as you thought. You are not separate from this flow of experience. You are the space in which it all arises and passes. Rest in that space now, vast, open, still. Let everything flow through you. Let yourself be held by the eternal now, which has no beginning and no end, which is always here, always present, always at peace. Breathe with the river. Rest with the stone. Dissolve into the flow. Sleep comes naturally when we stop resisting, stop fighting, stop trying to be anything other than what we are. Let go now. Flow. Rest. Sleep.
Story 5. The Monk Who Forgot How to Worry. In the province of Hunan, during the Tang dynasty, there lived a monk named Ling Shu who was known for his constant worrying. He worried about his practice. He worried about his health. He worried about the monastery's finances. He worried about the weather, about politics, about whether he was making progress on the path to enlightenment. His fellow monks would often find him sitting in the garden, his brow furrowed, his shoulders tense, lost in anxious thought. When they asked what troubled him, he always had an answer. There was always something to worry about. The abbot of the monastery, a wizened old master named Yuanwu, watched Ling Shu with compassionate concern. He could see that the young monk's worrying was making him ill. Ling Shu had difficulty sleeping. He ate little. His face had become pale and drawn. One day, Yuanwu called Ling Shu to his chambers. "My son," he said gently, "I have a special task for you. I need you to travel to the monastery at Mount Lu and deliver a message to the abbot there. It is a journey of 3 weeks, perhaps more." Ling Shu bowed. "Of course, master. When should I depart?" "Tomorrow morning, but I have one condition." Yuanwu looked at Ling Shu with eyes that seemed to see everything. "For the duration of this journey, you must not worry about anything. Not about the journey itself, not about the message you carry, not about the monastery here, not about your practice. Nothing. This is your practice for the next month. Do not worry." Ling Shu felt a wave of anxiety rise in his chest. "But master, how can I not worry? What if something happens? What if I lose the message? What if—" Yuanwu held up his hand. "You see? Already you are worrying about how to not worry. This is your task. Every time you notice worry arising, simply observe it and let it go. Do not feed it with your attention. Do not follow its stories. Simply return to the present moment, to your breath, to your footsteps on the path." Ling Shu bowed, though his mind was already spinning with concerns about how he would accomplish this task. The next morning, Ling Shu set out on his journey. The message was sealed in a small leather pouch that hung around his neck. The path led through forests and mountains, following rivers and crossing valleys. For the first several days, Ling Shu's mind was a storm of worry. He worried about losing the message. He worried about bandits. He worried about whether he was taking the right path. He worried about the weather. Each worry led to another, like a string of beads with no end. But each time he noticed himself worrying, he remembered the abbot's instruction. He would take a deep breath, acknowledge the worry without judgment, and let it go. Then he would return to the present moment, the feel of his feet on the earth, the sound of birds in the trees, the quality of light filtering through the leaves. At first, this was exhausting. The worries came back almost immediately, like waves crashing on a shore. But Ling Shu persisted. Each time a worry arose, he acknowledged it and returned to the present moment. Each time his mind spun stories about possible futures, he gently brought himself back to what was actually happening right now. Gradually, something began to shift. Ling Shu noticed that when he was fully present with the actual moment he was in, there was nothing to worry about. Right now, in this step, he was fine. Right now, breathing this breath, he was safe. Right now, seeing this tree, hearing this stream, feeling this breeze, everything was actually okay. The worries were all about possible futures, what might happen, what could go wrong. They were stories his mind was telling about events that hadn't occurred and might never occur. But in the actual present moment, there was usually no problem. After a week of travel, Ling Shu found himself walking through a beautiful forest. Shafts of sunlight pierced the canopy, illuminating patches of forest floor in golden light. He could hear a stream bubbling somewhere nearby. Birds called to each other in the branches above. For a long moment, Ling Shu was simply present with all of this. He was not thinking about the destination. He was not reviewing the past or planning the future. He was just walking in the forest, aware of the beauty around him, at peace. Then his mind began to offer a worry. But what if? Ling Shu smiled. He recognized the familiar pattern. His mind wanted to spin a story about a possible problem. But he didn't have to follow that story. He could simply let it pass, like a cloud moving across the sky, and return to the beauty of this moment. "Not now, worry," he said gently to his mind. "Right now I am walking in a forest. Right now everything is fine." The worry dissolved, and Ling Shu continued walking, present and peaceful. This became his practice. Day by day, step by step, breath by breath, he chose presence over worry. And the more he practiced, the easier it became. The spaces between worries grew longer, the worries themselves lost their urgency and their grip on his attention. Ling Shu began to sleep better. He ate with appetite, really tasting his simple meals. He noticed beauty everywhere, things he had walked past 1,000 times without seeing because he was too lost in worry. When he reached the monastery at Mount Lu 3 weeks later, the abbot there greeted him warmly. Ling Shu delivered the message and was invited to stay for a few days before beginning his return journey. During his stay, the abbot of Mount Lu noticed something about Ling Shu. "You have a quality of peace about you," he observed. "Have you been practicing long?" Ling Shu laughed. "I have been practicing for 3 weeks, and I am only beginning to learn. I was sent here to deliver a message, but the journey itself was the true message." When Ling Shu returned to his home monastery a month and a half after he had left, Yuanwu was sitting in the garden drinking tea. He looked up as Ling Shu approached and smiled. "Welcome back, Ling Shu. Tell me, did you deliver the message?" "Yes, master." "And did you accomplish your practice? Did you refrain from worrying?" Ling Shu paused for a moment, checking in with himself. "Less, master, much less. I notice worries arising, but they don't grab me the way they used to. They pass through like clouds, and I find I can choose to return to presence, to this moment, which is almost always okay." "Good," Yuanwu said, "but don't make not worrying into a new worry. Don't worry about whether you're worrying too much." He smiled at the paradox. "Simply continue to practice presence. The rest will take care of itself." Years later, Ling Shu became known not as the monk who worried about everything, but as the monk who was always peacefully present. When people asked him his secret, he would tell them about his journey to Mount Lu. "The abbot sent me on a journey and told me not to worry. At first, this seemed impossible, but I discovered that worry lives in the future, in stories about what might happen. When I stayed present with what was actually happening right here, right now, there was usually no problem. This moment, this breath, this step was usually fine. And life is only ever this moment." As you rest now, notice if worry is present in your mind. Worries about tomorrow, about next week, about things that haven't happened yet. Notice how these worries pull you out of the peace of this present moment. You are lying down right now. You are breathing. In this actual moment, right now, are you okay? Is there any real problem in this precise moment? Usually the answer is no. This moment is okay. This breath is okay. This gentle darkness that surrounds you is okay. Let the worries pass like clouds. Don't fight them. Don't judge yourself for having them. Simply notice them and return to the peace of this moment, this breath, this sensation of rest, this gentle now. Everything is okay right now in this moment. Rest in that okayness. Let it hold you. Let sleep come naturally when you stop reaching into imaginary futures and rest fully in the actual present. Breathe, return, rest. You are safe. You are here. All is well.
Story 7. The Bell of Mindfulness. In a small temple in Vietnam, there was an old bronze bell that hung in the courtyard. It was rung 3 times each day, at dawn, at noon, and at dusk.
When the bell rang, all the monks and nuns would stop whatever they were doing, take 3 conscious breaths, and return to the present moment before continuing their activities. A young monk named Tao found this practice frustrating at first. He would be in the middle of something important, copying a sutra, repairing a roof, preparing food, and the bell would ring, interrupting his work. He would dutifully stop and breathe, but inwardly he resented the interruption. One day, Tao was rushing to complete a task before the noon meal. He was carrying water from the well to the garden, moving quickly, his mind already on the next task he needed to complete. As he hurried along the path, the noon bell rang. Tao stopped, set down his buckets, and prepared to take his 3 breaths, but he did so impatiently, rushing through them so he could get back to his work. On his 3rd breath, something happened. The weight of the water buckets had created pain in his shoulders that he hadn't noticed while he was hurrying. The moment he stopped and breathed, he felt it fully. His shoulders were screaming with tension. His breath had been shallow and rapid. His jaw was clenched. His whole body was tight with stress and hurry. In that moment of stillness, Tao realized he had been rushing through his entire day without any awareness of his body, his breath, or the present moment. He had been completely lost in doing, in completing tasks, in getting to the next thing. He hadn't actually been present for any of it. He looked down at the buckets of water he had been carrying. The water surface, which had been sloshing and rippling from his rapid movement, was now becoming still. He could see the sky reflected in the water, perfectly clear and blue. But this reflection had been there all along. He just hadn't been still enough to see it. From that day forward, Tao's relationship with the bell changed completely. Instead of resenting it as an interruption, he began to welcome it as a rescue. 3 times a day, the bell saved him from his unconscious rushing, his disconnection from the present moment, his habit of being lost in thoughts about the past or future. The bell became his teacher. When it rang, he would stop completely, not just his body, but his mind. He would bring his full awareness to his breath. The first breath, he would notice his in-breath and out-breath. The second breath, he would scan his body, noticing any tension or tightness. The third breath, he would open his awareness to the present moment, the sounds, the sights, the quality of air, the aliveness of this instant. After these 3 breaths, when he returned to his activity, everything was different. He was actually present for what he was doing. When he carried water, he felt the weight of the buckets, the movement of his muscles, the rhythm of his walking. When he copied sutras, he saw each brushstroke, felt the texture of the paper, noticed the flow of ink. When he prepared food, he smelled each ingredient, felt each cutting motion, was fully present with the transformation of raw vegetables into a meal. Tao began to notice that when he was present, truly present with each moment, there was a quality of peace and ease that didn't depend on circumstances. He could be present with difficult emotions, with challenging work, with physical discomfort, and still be at peace. Because peace wasn't something to be found in perfect conditions. Peace was the natural result of being fully here, fully now, fully present with whatever was arising. Years passed, and Tao became known for his mindfulness, for his presence, for the quality of calm attention he brought to everything he did. People would watch him perform simple tasks and feel a sense of peace themselves just from witnessing his complete presence. One day, a visitor to the temple asked Tao, "How did you become so mindful? How do you stay present so much of the time?"
Tao smiled and gestured to the bronze bell in the courtyard. That bell taught me to stop and breathe 3 times a day. Then I learned to find bells everywhere, in doorways, in footsteps, in birdsong, in the feeling of my feet touching the ground. Life is full of bells if we have ears to hear them. Each moment is inviting us to wake up, to be present, to return home to ourselves. "But don't you ever forget? Don't you ever get lost in thought?" asked the visitor. "Of course," Tao said. "Many times each day I drift into unconsciousness, back into rushing and thinking and planning. I wait for the bell to call me back." "Then I will teach you something," Tao said. "You can create your own bells throughout the day. Any sound, any sight, any sensation can become a bell of mindfulness if you decide it will be so." "What do you mean, Master?" "Choose something that happens regularly throughout your day. The sound of a bird, the sight of a doorway, the feeling of your feet touching the ground. Each time you encounter this thing, let it be a bell. Let it remind you to stop, to breathe, to return to the present moment before continuing your activities." Tao decided to try this. He chose doorways as his bell. Each time he passed through a doorway, he would stop for just a moment, take one conscious breath, and arrive fully in the present moment before continuing. The change was remarkable. He passed through many doorways each day, entering and leaving his room, going in and out of the meditation hall, the kitchen, the library. Each doorway became an opportunity to return home to the present moment. Then Tao added another bell, the feeling of his feet touching the ground. Each time he noticed his feet on the earth, he would take one conscious breath and come back to presence. Since he was always walking, always moving, this meant he had countless opportunities throughout the day to wake up from the dream of his thoughts and be present with his actual life. Slowly, Tao began to live more and more of his day in presence. The gaps between moments of mindfulness grew shorter. Instead of being unconscious most of the time and waking up only when the bronze bell rang, he was now awake more often than asleep. He discovered something profound. When he was present, truly present with each moment, there was a quality of peace and ease that didn't depend on circumstances. He could be present with difficult emotions, with challenging work, with physical discomfort, and still be at peace. Because peace wasn't something to be found in perfect conditions. Peace was the natural result of being fully here, fully now, fully present with whatever was arising. Years passed, and Tao became known for his mindfulness, for his presence, for the quality of calm attention he brought to everything he did. People would watch him perform simple tasks and feel a sense of peace themselves just from witnessing his complete presence. One day, a visitor to the temple asked Tao, "How did you become so mindful? How do you stay present so much of the time?" Tao smiled and gestured to the bronze bell in the courtyard. "That bell taught me to stop and breathe 3 times a day. Then I learned to find bells everywhere, in doorways, in footsteps, in birdsong, in the feeling of my feet touching the ground. Life is full of bells if we have ears to hear them. Each moment is inviting us to wake up, to be present, to return home to ourselves." "But don't you ever forget? Don't you ever get lost in thought?" asked the visitor. "Of course," Tao said. "Many times each day I drift into unconsciousness, back into rushing and thinking and planning. I wait for the bell to call me back." "Then I will teach you something," Tao said. "You can create your own bells throughout the day. Any sound, any sight,
Any sensation can become a bell of mindfulness if you decide it will be so. What do you mean, Master? Choose something that happens regularly throughout your day. The sound of a bird, the sight of a doorway, the feeling of your feet touching the ground. Each time you encounter this thing, let it be a bell. Let it remind you to stop, to breathe, to return to the present moment before continuing your activity.
Story 7. The Bell of Mindfulness. In a small temple in Vietnam, there was an old bronze bell that hung in the courtyard. It was rung 3 times each day, at dawn, at noon, and at dusk. When the bell...
Story 8. The Student Who Wanted Enlightenment. In ancient China, there was a young student named Ming who traveled from monastery to monastery seeking enlightenment. He had studied with many masters, read countless sutras, practiced diligently for years, but enlightenment continued to elude him. He heard of a master named Lao Tzu, who lived alone in a small hermitage high in the mountains. It was said that Lao Tzu had attained complete enlightenment and lived in perfect peace and freedom. Ming decided he must study with this master. The journey to Lao Tzu's hermitage was arduous. It took Ming 3 weeks of climbing through treacherous mountain paths. When he finally arrived, exhausted and hungry, he found a tiny hut with a small vegetable garden beside it. An old man was kneeling in the garden, pulling weeds. "Excuse me," Ming said, bowing. "I am looking for the master Lao Tzu." The old man looked up and smiled. "You have found him. Welcome." Ming could hardly believe this simple old man, kneeling in the dirt, was the enlightened master he sought. But he bowed deeply and asked, "Master, will you teach me? I have been seeking enlightenment for many years, but it continues to escape me. I will do anything, endure any hardship to achieve it." Lao Tzu stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "Anything? That is a bold claim. But very well. If you wish to stay and learn, there is a condition." "Anything, Master. I will agree to any condition." "For 1 year, you must not seek enlightenment. You must not practice meditation to become enlightened. You must not read sutras to become enlightened. You must do nothing for the purpose of achieving enlightenment. Can you agree to this?" Ming was stunned. "But Master, how can I attain enlightenment if I don't seek it?" Lao Tzu smiled. "That is precisely the question you must answer. Will you agree to my condition or not?" Ming thought about this. He had traveled so far, he could not turn back now. "I agree, Master." "Good. Then you will stay in that small shed behind the house. Each day you will help me with the work of living. We will grow vegetables, cook meals, repair what needs repairing, clean what needs cleaning. But you will not do any of this to become enlightened. You will simply do it because it needs to be done. Can you do this?" "Yes, Master." And so began the strangest year of Ming's life. Each day he rose at dawn and worked with Lao Tzu. They tended the garden, pulling weeds, watering plants, harvesting vegetables. They prepared simple meals, cleaned the house, chopped wood for the fire. They mended clothes, repaired the roof, tended to the small stream that provided their water. At first, Ming was deeply frustrated. He had come here to achieve enlightenment, and instead he was pulling weeds. This felt like a waste of his time. But he had agreed to Lao Tzu's condition, so he continued. Lao Tzu rarely spoke, and when he did, he never spoke about enlightenment or Buddhism or philosophy. He spoke about the vegetables, about the weather, about the small practical details of daily life. Ming found this maddening.
Where were the profound teachings? Where was the wisdom he had traveled so far to receive? As months passed, something began to shift in Ming. With nothing to achieve, no spiritual goal to strive toward, he began to actually be present with what he was doing. When he pulled weeds, he pulled weeds. When he chopped wood, he chopped wood. When he ate, he ate. He noticed that Lao Tzu did everything with complete attention. When the master washed a bowl, he was fully present with washing the bowl. His hands moved with care, with attention, as if washing this bowl was the most important thing in the world. When he planted a seed, he did so with the same complete presence. Ming began to emulate this, not to become enlightened, but simply because he noticed it made the work more pleasant, more satisfying. When he was fully present with pulling weeds, it was no longer a tedious chore. It became almost meditative, satisfying. He could feel the soil, smell the earth, see the garden becoming clearer and more beautiful. Slowly, without trying to, without seeking it, Ming began to experience moments of deep peace, moments when his mind was quiet, when he was simply here, doing this, being this. There was no separation between him and the activity. No Ming doing the work, just the work doing itself. One day, nearly a year after he had arrived, Ming was washing vegetables by the stream. The morning sun was creating diamonds of light on the water. His hands were cold from the stream, but it felt pleasant, alive. He was completely absorbed in the simple act of washing these vegetables, seeing the dirt rinse away, revealing the bright green beneath. Suddenly, something broke open in him. He looked down at his hands, at the vegetables, at the water, at the sunlight, the mountains, the sky. All of it was one seamless whole, not intellectually, but directly, immediately, obviously. And he saw that this had always been true. There had never been a separate Ming seeking enlightenment. There was only this eternal present moment, appearing as all things, including the one who seeks and the enlightenment that is sought. Ming began to laugh. He laughed so hard he had to sit down on the bank of the stream. He laughed until tears ran down his face. Lao Tzu, who had been working nearby, came over and sat beside him. "What is so funny?" he asked, though his eyes were twinkling. "Master," Ming said, still laughing, "I have been seeking something I already had. I have been trying to get somewhere I already was. I have been running towards something that was here all along." Lao Tzu nodded. "Yes, this is the great cosmic joke. Enlightenment is not something to be achieved in the future. It is not something separate from this ordinary moment. It is this, just washing vegetables, just pulling weeds, just being completely here, completely present, completely one with whatever is arising." "But why didn't you tell me this when I arrived? Would you have believed me? You were so convinced that enlightenment was something special, something extraordinary, something that required years of effort and seeking. You had to stop seeking to find what was never lost. You had to let go of trying to become something special, to realize the miracle of what you already are." Ming sat by the stream for a long time, watching the water flow, feeling the sun on his face.
Story 8. The Student Who Wanted Enlightenment. In ancient China, there was a young student named Ming who traveled from monastery to monastery seeking enlightenment. He had studied with many masters, read countless sutras, practiced diligently for years, but enlightenment continued to elude him. He heard of a master named Lao Tzu, who lived alone in a small hermitage high in the mountains. It was said that Lao Tzu had attained complete enlightenment and lived in perfect peace and freedom. Ming decided he must study with this master. The journey to Lao Tzu's hermitage was arduous. It took Ming 3 weeks of climbing through treacherous mountain paths. When he finally arrived, exhausted and hungry, he found a tiny hut with a small vegetable garden beside it. An old man was kneeling in the garden, pulling weeds. "Excuse me," Ming said, bowing. "I am looking for the master, Lao Tzu." The old man looked up and smiled. "You have found him. Welcome." Ming could hardly believe this simple old man, kneeling in the dirt, was the enlightened master he sought. But he bowed deeply and asked, "Master, will you teach me? I have been seeking enlightenment for many years, but it continues to escape me. I will do anything, endure any hardship to achieve it." Lao Tzu stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "Anything? That is a bold claim. But very well. If you wish to stay and learn, there is a condition." "Anything, master. I will agree to any condition." "For 1 year, you must not seek enlightenment. You must not practice meditation to become enlightened. You must not read sutras to become enlightened. You must do nothing for the purpose of achieving enlightenment. Can you agree to this?" Ming was stunned. "But master, how can I attain enlightenment if I don't seek it?" Lao Tzu smiled. "That is precisely the question you must answer. Will you agree to my condition or not?" Ming thought about this. He had traveled so far, he could not turn back now.
Story 9. The Monk Who Learned from a Child. In a monastery in ancient Japan, there lived a very learned monk named Hakuin, who was considered a great scholar. He had studied all the major sutras, could recite vast texts from memory, and was often consulted by other monks on difficult points of Buddhist philosophy. But despite all his knowledge, Hakuin felt something was missing. He understood Buddhism intellectually, but he didn't feel he had truly grasped its essence. He could explain emptiness, but he didn't feel empty. He could discourse on presence, but he was rarely truly present. One spring day, Hakuin was walking through the village at the base of the mountain where his monastery stood. He was deep in thought, contemplating a difficult passage from the Diamond Sutra, when he heard laughter. He looked up and saw a small child, perhaps 4 or 5 years old, playing in a puddle left by the morning's rain. The child was completely absorbed in his play. He was dropping stones into the puddle and watching the ripples spread out in perfect circles. Each time he dropped a stone, he laughed with pure delight. Hakuin stopped and watched the child. There was something in the child's complete absorption, his total presence, his unself-conscious joy that struck Hakuin deeply. The child wasn't thinking about Buddhism or enlightenment or the nature of reality. He was simply, completely, entirely here, dropping stones in a puddle, laughing at ripples. In that moment, watching the child, Hakuin had a realization. This child was demonstrating the very presence, the very nowness, the very unself-conscious beingness that Hakuin had been seeking through all his study. The child didn't understand emptiness conceptually, but he was empty. Empty of self-consciousness, empty of striving, empty of trying to be somewhere other than exactly where he was. Hakuin approached the child and knelt beside the puddle. "What are you doing?" he asked gently. The child looked up, his face bright with joy. "Playing," he said, as if this should be obvious. "Can I play too?" Hakuin asked. The child handed him a stone, and Hakuin dropped it into the puddle. The ripples spread out in perfect concentric circles. The child laughed, and Hakuin found himself laughing too. For several minutes, the learned monk and the small child played together, dropping stones and watching ripples. Hakuin noticed that when he was fully present with this simple activity, his mind became quiet. There were no thoughts about sutras or philosophy or enlightenment. There was just this: stone, water, ripples, laughter. When the child's mother called him home, Hakuin remained kneeling by the puddle. He looked at the water, still now, reflecting the sky. He had read about the mind being like still water, reflecting reality clearly. He had understood this concept intellectually, but now, playing with a child in a puddle, he had experienced it directly. From that day forward, Hakuin's practice changed. He still studied the sutras, but he no longer studied them to accumulate knowledge. He studied them to deepen his capacity for presence, for direct experience. He began to notice opportunities for childlike presence throughout his day. When he ate, he tried to eat with the same complete absorption the child had shown with his stones and puddle. When he walked with attention to each step, not lost in thought. When he sat in meditation, he sat with the simplicity of a child at play, not trying to achieve anything, just being present with what arose. One day, Hakuin was teaching a group of young monks. They were struggling with a difficult meditation technique, becoming frustrated with their inability to maintain focus. Hakuin stopped the meditation and took them outside. "Tell me," he said, "do you see that bird?" He pointed to a sparrow hopping in the courtyard. The monks looked at the bird and nodded. Watch the bird the way a child would watch the bird, not trying to meditate on the bird, not trying to understand something about the bird, not trying to use the bird to become enlightened. Just watch the bird with simple, fresh, interested attention. The monks did as he instructed. They watched the bird hop, peck at the ground, ruffle its feathers, fly to a branch. As they watched with this simple, childlike attention, their minds became quiet. There were no thoughts about sutras or philosophy or enlightenment. There was just this: stone, water, ripples, laughter.
After a while, Hakuin spoke. This is meditation, not trying to control your mind or achieve some special state, just this simple, fresh, interested presence with what is, like a child watching a bird, like a child dropping stones in a puddle. Can you bring this quality of attention to your breath, to your sitting, to each moment of your life? The monks understood. They had been approaching meditation as adults, with goals, with expectations, with judgment about success and failure. Hakuin was teaching them to approach it like children, with curiosity, with freshness, with simple presence. Years later, when Hakuin was very old, students would ask him about his greatest teacher. They expected him to name some famous master or ancient text. Instead, Hakuin would smile and say, "My greatest teacher was a child I met in a village, playing in a puddle. He taught me that enlightenment is not something to be achieved through great effort and learning. It is already here, available in each simple moment when we approach life with the fresh eyes and open heart of a child." As you rest now, can you bring this childlike quality to your experience? Not trying to meditate correctly or fall asleep properly or do rest the right way. Just simply being here, curious about this moment, open to this experience, fresh and innocent as a child. Feel your breath the way a child might notice their breath for the first time. Interesting, in and out. Cool air in, warm air out, the gentle rise and fall of your chest. Notice the darkness around you with childlike curiosity. What is darkness? It's not frightening, not empty. It's soft, gentle, holding you like a blanket. Let go of adult concerns, adult worries, adult striving. Be here with the simplicity and innocence of a child. Wonder at the miracle of breathing. Marvel at the softness of your pillow. Be amazed by the fact that you are here, alive, resting. In this childlike presence, there is no need to achieve anything, no need to be anywhere else, no need to be anyone special. Just this, just now, just breathing, just being. Let sleep come the way a tired child falls asleep, not by trying, but by simply relaxing into rest, trusting that you are safe, that you are held, that all is well. Breathe with childlike simplicity, rest with childlike trust, be here with childlike wonder. All is well, you are safe, you are here. Rest now, little one, rest.
Story 10. The Master of Tea. In the province of Kyoto, during the 16th century, there lived a tea master named Sen no Rikyu, who was renowned throughout Japan for his tea ceremonies. But what made Rikyu's ceremonies special was not their elaborateness or complexity, it was their profound simplicity. Rikyu believed that the tea ceremony was not about following complicated rules or displaying wealth and status. It was about creating a space of pure presence where host and guest could meet in genuine connection, where the simple act of preparing and sharing tea became a meditation, a prayer, a moment of sacred ordinariness. One day, the great warlord Toyotomi Hideyoshi commanded Rikyu to perform a tea ceremony for him. Hideyoshi was a powerful man, accustomed to grand displays and elaborate ceremonies. Rikyu knew this would be a challenge. When Hideyoshi arrived at Rikyu's tea house, he was surprised by its simplicity. The room was small, plain, with no decorations except a simple scroll hanging in the alcove and a single flower in a plain vase. The tatami mats were clean but worn. There was nothing to indicate wealth or status. Hideyoshi frowned. He had expected something more impressive from the famous tea master. Rikyu greeted Hideyoshi with a deep bow and invited him to enter. The doorway to the tea room was deliberately small and low, requiring even the powerful warlord to bow as he entered. This was intentional. All who entered the tea room, regardless of their status in the outside world, entered as equals. Once inside, Rikyu asked Hideyoshi to sit and wait quietly while he prepared the tea. Rikyu moved with extraordinary slowness and attention. Each gesture was complete, mindful, deliberate. He warmed the tea bowl. He measured the tea powder. He heated the water to precisely the right temperature. As Hideyoshi watched, something strange happened. The simplicity and precision of Rikyu's movements began to quiet his mind. The warlord, who was always planning his next conquest, worrying about his enemies, managing his vast territories, found his thoughts slowing down. There was something mesmerizing about watching someone do something so simple with such complete attention. Rikyu poured the hot water over the tea powder and whisked it into a frothy green liquid. The sound of the whisk against the bowl was soft, rhythmic, soothing. Steam rose from the tea, carrying its subtle fragrance into the room. Finally, Rikyu turned the bowl so that its most beautiful side faced Hideyoshi and presented it with both hands, bowing. Hideyoshi received the bowl and looked down at the tea. The green surface was perfect, the foam fine and delicate. He raised the bowl to his lips and tasted. The tea was not just tea, it contained the care with which it had been prepared, the attention Rikyu had brought to each movement, the peace of this simple room, the quieting of mind that had occurred during the preparation. Hideyoshi found himself completely present with this moment, this tea, this taste. All his concerns about politics and power and conquest faded away. When he had finished, Hideyoshi set down the bowl and sat in silence for a long moment.
Then he looked at Rikyū. I have attended many elaborate tea ceremonies, ceremonies with expensive utensils, rare teas, elaborate decorations. But this simple ceremony has touched something in me that none of those touched. What is your secret, Rikyū? Rikyū bowed. There is no secret, my lord. The way of tea is simply the practice of complete presence. When I prepare tea, I only prepare tea. When I pour water, I only pour water. When I serve, I only serve. I bring my whole attention to each small act, and in doing so, each small act becomes sacred. But surely there is more to it than that, Hideyoshi pressed. There is both less and more, Rikyū replied. Less in that there is no complicated technique, no esoteric knowledge required. More in that this simple presence is actually the most difficult thing in the world. To truly be here, now, completely, without the mind wandering to past or future, without judgment or distraction, without trying to be anywhere other than exactly where you are, this is the practice of a lifetime. Rikyū continued, in the tea ceremony we say there are 4 principles: harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. Harmony between host and guest, between utensils and movements, between self and moment. Respect for the tea, for the water, for each simple object and action. Purity of intention, simplicity of presentation, and tranquility, the peace that comes from being completely present. But these principles are not just for the tea ceremony, Rikyū said. They are for life itself. Every moment offers an opportunity for harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. Every action, no matter how simple, can be performed with complete attention and become a meditation, a prayer, a moment of sacred ordinariness. Hideyoshi visited Rikyū many times after that first ceremony. Each time he found that the simple ritual of tea brought him back to presence, back to peace, back to the simple wonder of being alive in this moment. The tea master's humble ceremony became one of his most treasured experiences, more valuable than all the elaborate entertainments his wealth could buy. Years later, when circumstances forced Rikyū to take his own life, Hideyoshi wept. He had lost not just a tea master, but a teacher who had shown him that true wealth was not in possessions or power, but in the capacity to be fully present, fully alive, fully here in each precious moment. Rikyū's teachings lived on through his students and their students. The way of tea continued, teaching generation after generation that the sacred is not separate from the ordinary, that enlightenment is not somewhere else but right here, that peace is found not in extraordinary experiences, but in bringing extraordinary attention to the simplest things. Even today, in tea rooms throughout Japan, people gather to practice what Rikyū taught, the art of being completely present, of elevating the ordinary to the sacred through the quality of attention we bring it to it. As you rest now, can you bring this tea master's attention to your breathing? Not trying to breathe a certain way, just being completely present with each breath as it comes, as it goes. Feel the breath entering your nostrils, cool, gentle. Follow it down into your lungs. Feel your chest rise. Feel the pause at the top of the breath. Then the release, the exhalation, warm air leaving your body, the gentle fall of your chest, the pause at the bottom before the next breath begins. Each breath, when you're fully present with it, is complete, perfect, sacred. Not because you're doing it right, but because you're truly here for it. This moment of rest, when you bring your full presence to it,
becomes sacred. Not special, not extraordinary, just fully experienced, fully received, fully lived. Let each breath be like Riku's tea ceremony, simple, mindful, complete. Each breath an opportunity to be fully here, fully present, fully alive. In this presence there is peace. In this simplicity there is rest. In this ordinary moment, fully experienced, there is everything you need. Breathe slowly, mindfully, completely. Rest deeply, peacefully, wholly. Be here, now, entirely. The sacred is not somewhere else. It is here, in this breath, in this moment of rest, in this gentle darkness that holds you. All is well. You are here. You are breathing. You are at pace. Rest now in this sacred ordinary moment. Rest completely. Rest well.
Story 11. The Mountain Hermit. High in the Himalayan mountains, far from any village or monastery, there lived a hermit named Milarepa, who had renounced all worldly possessions and lived in a cave. He owned nothing but a simple robe and a wooden bowl. His days were spent in meditation and his nights in deep rest. A young seeker named Pema heard stories of this hermit and decided to find him, convinced that such a renunciant must possess great wisdom. After many weeks of difficult travel, Pema finally found Milarepa's cave. The hermit was sitting at the entrance of his cave, eyes closed, face serene, completely still. Pema waited respectfully for a long time, not wanting to disturb the meditation. Finally, as the sun began to set, Milarepa opened his eyes. "Welcome, traveler," he said with a warm smile. "You have come a long way." Pema bowed deeply. "Master, I have come seeking wisdom. I have heard that you have renounced everything and live in perfect peace. Please teach me how to find such peace." Milarepa laughed gently. "You think peace comes from renunciation, from giving up possessions? Come, sit with me, and I will tell you what I have learned." Pema sat, and Milarepa began to speak. "When I first came to this mountain, I did so because I believed, as you do, that peace required renunciation. I thought that my possessions, my relationships, my roles in the world were the source of my suffering. So I gave them all up and came here to this cave. For the first year I was miserable. I had left behind my possessions, yes, but I had brought with me something much heavier, my thoughts, my regrets about the past, my worries about the future, my judgments about myself and others, my desires and aversions, my opinions and beliefs. These weighed far more than any physical possessions I had owned. I sat in this cave, trying to meditate, trying to find peace, but my mind was like a marketplace, noisy, crowded, chaotic. I had renounced the outer world, but not the inner world of my own mental proliferation. One night, unable to sleep, I walked outside and looked up at the stars. The sky was so clear, the stars so bright, it took my breath away. And I realized something. The stars had always been there. They were there when I lived in the village, busy with my work and relationships. They were there every night, but I had never really seen them because I was always lost in thought, always distracted, always somewhere else in my mind. And I understood. Peace was not something I would find by running away from the world. It was something I had been missing by running away from the present moment. All those years in the village, peace had been available in each moment, in the stars, in a breath, in the touch of wind on skin. But I had been too busy, too distracted,
too lost in my thoughts to notice it. So I changed my practice. Instead of trying to renounce the world, I began to practice being fully present with whatever was arising. When I was cold, I was fully present with being cold. I didn't resist it or wish it away. I felt it completely, and in that complete feeling, the suffering around being cold dissolved. There was just the sensation of cold, which was not suffering, just sensation. When I was hungry, I was fully present with hunger. When I was lonely, I was fully present with loneliness. And I discovered that when I stopped resisting my experience, when I stopped trying to make it different, when I was just completely present with what was, there was peace. Not because my circumstances were perfect, but because I was no longer fighting with reality. Milarepa paused and looked at Pema with compassionate eyes. Do you understand what I am saying? You don't need to come to a cave in the mountains to find peace. You don't need to renounce your possessions or your life. You only need to renounce one thing, the habit of being somewhere else in your mind. But Master, protested Pema, surely it's easier to be present here in this quiet cave than in the busy village with all its distractions. Is it? Milarepa asked. I have no external distractions here, true, but the mind creates its own distractions. Even here, alone in this cave, my mind can spin stories, replay memories, imagine futures, judge, compare, desire, fear. The external circumstances matter less than you think. What matters is your practice of presence, and this can be practiced anywhere. In fact, practicing presence in the midst of a busy life with all its challenges and demands can be a more powerful practice than sitting alone in a cave. Milarepa gestured to his simple bowl. I have this bowl. Sometimes I use it for water, sometimes for food. It is just a bowl. But I have noticed something interesting. If I'm truly present when I drink water from this bowl, that simple act becomes profound. I taste the water fully. I feel its coolness. I'm grateful for it. The drinking of water becomes a meditation, a prayer, a moment of deep presence. But if I am lost in thought, if I'm drinking while my mind is elsewhere, I could be drinking the finest tea from the most precious cup, and it would be wasted. I wouldn't really taste it. I wouldn't really experience it. So I ask you, is the key to peace in the bowl, in the cave, in the renunciation of possessions, or is it in the quality of presence we bring to each moment, regardless of circumstances? Pema sat in silence, absorbing this teaching. Everything he had believed about the spiritual path was being turned upside down. He had thought he needed to change his circumstances to find peace, but Milarepa was saying the circumstances didn't matter. What mattered was presence. How do I practice this presence? Pema asked. Start with your breath, Milarepa said. Right now, are you breathing? Pema became aware of his breath. Yes. Are you thinking about your breath, or are you actually feeling it? Pema noticed he was thinking about his breath rather than feeling it. He shifted his attention and actually felt the breath, the cool air entering his nostrils, the expansion of his chest, the release of the exhale. Good, Milarepa said. This is presence, feeling rather than thinking about feeling, experiencing rather than thinking about experience. It's very simple, but we spend most of our lives thinking about life rather than actually living it. Practice this with everything. When you walk, feel your feet touching the ground. When you eat, taste your food. When you wash your hands, feel the water. When you talk to someone, actually listen to them rather than planning what you'll say next. When you're tired, feel the tiredness completely rather than resisting it. This is the practice, not running away to a cave, not renouncing the world, but being completely present with the world, with life, with each moment as it arises.
Pema stayed with Milarepa for 3 days. Each day the hermit taught him, not through elaborate discourses, but through simple presence. They sat together in silence. They walked together, feeling each step. They ate simple meals together, tasting each bite. They watched the sun set, fully present with the changing colors. When Pema left to return to his village, he carried with him not a complicated teaching, but a simple practice. Be here, now, completely. He discovered that back in his busy village life, with all its demands and distractions, he could practice what Milarepa had taught. Each moment offered an opportunity for presence. Years later, Pema became known as a wise teacher himself. When people asked him about his training, he would tell them about the hermit in the cave. He taught me that peace is not a place you go to. It's not a circumstance you create. It's a quality of attention you bring to wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whoever you're with. As you rest now, understand that you don't need to be anywhere special to find rest. You don't need perfect circumstances, perfect quiet, the perfect bed. Right here, right now, exactly as you are, in exactly this place, rest is available. Simply be present with this moment. Feel your body resting. Feel your breath flowing. Feel the gentle support beneath you. Not thinking about these things, but actually feeling them. This is all you need. Not a cave in the mountains, not perfect silence, not ideal conditions. Just this moment, fully received, fully experienced, fully lived. In this simple presence, there is rest. In this complete acceptance of what is, there is peace. In this gentle attention to now, there is every...
Story 12. The Garden of Acceptance. In ancient Korea, there was a Zen garden that was famous throughout the land, not for its beauty, though it was beautiful, but for the peace that descended upon all who entered it. People would travel for days just to sit in this garden for an hour, and they would leave transformed. The garden belonged to a monastery, and it was tended by a very old nun named Sunim, who had been caring for it for over 50 years. People assumed that Sunim must have some secret technique, some special way of arranging the stones or trimming the trees that created the garden's extraordinary peace. One day, a landscape designer named Jiho came to the monastery. He had heard about the garden and wanted to learn Sunim's secret so he could create such gardens for others. He was granted permission to stay and observe Sunim's work. Jiho watched carefully as Sunim went about her daily routine. He took notes on how she raked the gravel, how she pruned the trees, how she placed new stones. But he saw nothing particularly special in her techniques. She used standard methods, nothing unusual or secret. After a week of observation, Jiho approached Sunim with confusion. "Honored Sunim," he said, bowing, "I have watched you work for many days now, and I see that your techniques are quite ordinary. Yet the peace in this garden is extraordinary. What is the secret I am missing?" Sunim smiled and set down her rake. "Walk with me," she said. They walked together through the garden in silence. Sunim stopped beside a gnarled old pine tree that grew at an unusual angle, bent by years of wind. "What do you see when you look at this tree?" Sunim asked. Jiho examined the tree with his professional eye. "I see a tree that has been damaged by wind. If this were my garden, I would probably remove it and plant a new, straighter tree in its place. This one detracts from the overall aesthetic." Sunim nodded slowly. "And this is why your gardens, no matter how skillfully designed, will never have the peace of this garden." Jiho looked puzzled. "I don't understand." "This tree," Sunim said gently, "is perfect exactly as it is.
It has been shaped by wind and weather, by the conditions of its life. It has bent but not broken. It has survived storms that would have destroyed a straighter, more rigid tree. Its unusual angle creates an interesting contrast with the vertical stones nearby. Birds nest in its branches. In autumn, its needles fall in beautiful patterns on the ground beneath it. When you look at this tree, you see a flaw to be corrected. When I look at this tree, I see perfection expressing itself. This difference in seeing, this is the secret you seek. Sunim continued walking, and Jiho followed, listening carefully. When I tend this garden, I am not trying to impose my idea of perfection upon it. I am not fighting with the garden, trying to make it conform to some ideal in my mind. I am listening to the garden. I am accepting what is and working with it, not against it. They stopped beside a section of moss that was growing in an unexpected pattern, spreading across stones in a way that seemed random. Another designer might see this moss as growing where it shouldn't and remove it, but I see it following the moisture, finding its own perfect path. So I allow it, and it creates a pattern more beautiful than anything I could have planned. The garden teaches acceptance. Acceptance of what is, acceptance of imperfection, acceptance of the natural way things unfold when we stop trying to control everything. And the people who visit this garden, Sunim said, they feel this acceptance. They feel that they too can be accepted exactly as they are, bent and imperfect and weathered by life. They don't need to be different or better or more perfect. They can simply be, and that is enough. This is why people find peace here, not because the garden is perfectly designed, but because the garden embodies acceptance, and in that acceptance there is rest. Over the following weeks, Jiho's understanding deepened. He began to see that Sunim's work was not about controlling or perfecting the garden. It was about being in relationship with it, listening to it, accepting it, and making small adjustments that honored its essential nature rather than fighting against it. When weeds grew, Sunim didn't automatically remove them all. She looked at each one. Some were allowed to stay because they attracted beneficial insects or prevented erosion. Others were removed because they were truly harmful to the garden's balance. But each decision came from acceptance and wisdom rather than from rigid rules about what should or shouldn't be. When stones settled over time and shifted from their original positions, Sunim didn't always move them back. Sometimes the new position was even better than the original. The garden was allowed to evolve, to change, to become itself over time. One day, a terrible storm came through. Many branches were broken, some stones were displaced, and part of the carefully raked gravel was scattered. Jiho watched anxiously to see how Sunim would respond to this destruction of the garden's beauty. But Sunim simply waited for the storm to pass, then walked through the garden with gentle attention. She removed branches that were truly dead, but left others that might still have life in them. She repositioned some stones, but left others in their new places. She raked some areas of gravel, but left others with the natural patterns the storm had created. The storm is also part of the garden, Sunim explained to Jiho. The garden is not separate from the weather, from the seasons, from change and impermanence. Accepting the garden means accepting all of it, the growth and the decay, the beauty and the destruction, the order and the chaos. Jiho realized he had approached his own work with a very different attitude. He had tried to create gardens that were perfect and unchanging, gardens that fought against nature rather than working with it. No wonder his gardens, while beautiful, felt somehow stiff and lifeless. Before Jiho left the monastery, he sat one final time with Sunim in the garden. "I came here thinking I would learn techniques," Jiho said, "but you have taught me something much deeper. You have taught me about acceptance, about being in relationship with things as they are, rather than as I wish them to be." Sunim nodded. "This teaching is not just for gardens, Jiho. It is for all of life. When we accept life as it is, accept ourselves as we are, accept others as they are, accept circumstances as they are, we find peace, not because everything is perfect, but because we are no longer fighting with reality. This doesn't mean we become passive. I still tend the garden, I still make changes, but I do so from acceptance, not from resistance, from wisdom, not from rigidity, and there is a great difference in the feeling of this." Jiho returned to his work as a landscape designer, but his approach was completely transformed. He began to create gardens that worked with the natural landscape rather than imposing designs upon it. He began to accept the imperfections, the changes, the unpredictable elements, and people began to notice that his gardens had a quality they hadn't had before, a feeling of peace, of naturalness, of being in harmony with what is. As you rest now, can you bring this same acceptance to your experience? Perhaps you're not comfortable. Perhaps your mind is busy. Perhaps sleep hasn't come yet. Can you accept this, just as Sunim accepted the bent tree and the scattered gravel? You don't need to fight with your experience. You don't need to fix it or change it. You can simply be present with it, accepting it, allowing it to be exactly as it is. This body, exactly as it feels right now, is okay. This mind, with whatever thoughts are passing through, is okay. This moment, exactly as it is okay. When you stop fighting with what is, when you stop trying to force yourself to feel different, something extraordinary happens. The tension of resistance dissolves, and in that dissolution, there is rest. Breathe into acceptance. Rest in acceptance. Be held by this vast acceptance of this moment that loves you exactly as you are. All is well. You are enough. This moment is enough. Rest now in this deep acceptance. Rest completely. Rest well.
Story 15. The Silent Teacher. In a remote monastery in the mountains of Japan, there was a monk who had not spoken for 30 years. His name was Kon, though few remembered it, as he was simply called the Silent One by the other monks. Kon had taken a vow of silence 3 decades earlier, not as a punishment or ascetic practice, but as a choice. He had realized that his words often created more confusion than clarity, more separation than connection. So he had stopped speaking and found that silence was a more eloquent teacher than any words could be. Despite his silence, or perhaps because of it, Kon was deeply loved by everyone in the monastery. His presence was calming. When someone was troubled, they would often seek out Kon, sitting with him in silence, and somehow leave feeling lighter, clearer, more at peace. One autumn, a new student arrived at the monastery. His name was Kenji, and he was full of questions. Questions about Buddhism, about meditation, about the nature of reality, about the path to enlightenment. He had come to the monastery hoping to find answers. The abbot assigned Kenji to work with Kon in the garden. Kenji was disappointed. He had hoped to study with a teacher who could answer his questions, not a silent monk who would teach him nothing. On the first day, Kenji worked beside Kon in silence. They raked leaves, the autumn foliage falling. You ask how I can smile when I have nothing. But I ask you, how can you not smile when you have everything? You have breath in your lungs, eyes to see the sky, ears to hear music, legs to walk, hands to feel. You have this moment,
this precious, unrepeatable moment of being alive. What greater wealth is there than this? Sanjay sat in silence for a long time, something shifting deep within him. He had been so focused on acquiring more wealth, more status, more security, that he had completely missed what he already had. He had been so anxious about the future and regretful about the past that he had never truly been present for this moment, this breath, this life unfolding right now. "But," Sanjay finally said, his voice quiet, "you have no security, no roof over your head, no certainty about where your next meal will come from. How can you not worry?" Ananda smiled gently. "I have lived on this corner for 20 years. Not once in those 20 years have I starved. Not once have I been without shelter. Sometimes it is a doorway, sometimes just the open sky, but I have always had somewhere to rest my head. The universe has always provided what I truly needed, though not always what I thought I wanted." Worry is about a future that hasn't happened yet. It is about stories we tell ourselves about what might go wrong. But in this moment, right now, am I okay? Yes. Am I breathing? Yes. Do I have life? Yes. Then this moment is enough. When the next moment comes, it too will be enough. This is the secret of my wealth. I am rich in the only moment that exists, which is now. Sanjay stood slowly, his mind churning with these new ideas. He reached into his purse and pulled out a gold coin, far more than he had ever given to any beggar. He placed it in Ananda's bowl. "Thank you," Sanjay said, "for teaching me about true wealth." Ananda bowed his head. "May you discover the treasures you already possess. May you be rich in presence, abundant in gratitude, wealthy in the simple miracle of being alive." Sanjay walked away slowly, seeing the city as if for the first time. He noticed the colors, the bright oranges and reds of the spice sellers' wares, the deep blues of the cloth merchants' fabrics, the golden light of the late afternoon sun on the buildings. He heard the sounds, the laughter of children, the calls of vendors, the rhythmic pounding of a blacksmith's hammer. He felt the breeze on his face, cool and refreshing. All of this had been here all along, but he had been too busy worrying about his business to notice. He had been living like a beggar while believing himself to be rich. Meanwhile, Ananda, owning nothing, had been living like a king. That night, Sanjay sat in his beautiful house, surrounded by his expensive possessions, and practiced what Ananda had taught him. He listened to the sounds, the crickets outside, the rustle of curtains in the breeze. He felt his breath moving in and out. He allowed himself to simply be present with this moment, without planning, without worrying, without trying to be anywhere else. And for the first time in years, Sanjay felt wealthy. Truly, deeply wealthy. Not because of his possessions, but because of his presence. Not because of what he owned, but because of what he was able to notice, to appreciate, to receive. From that day forward, Sanjay's life changed. He still ran his business, still lived in his fine house, but he was no longer enslaved by these things. He began each day with Ananda's practice, noticing the sky, feeling his breath, listening to the sounds of life around him, appreciating the simple miracle of being alive. And in this practice, he found the peace that had eluded him despite all his wealth. He visited Ananda often, sitting with the beggar on his corner, learning more about the art of being present, of being grateful, of being rich in the only moment that matters, now. Years later, when Sanjay was an old man, people would ask him the secret of his contentment. He would smile and say, "I learned it from the richest man in the city, a beggar who owned nothing but appreciated everything." As you rest now, can you discover your own wealth? Not in possessions or achievements or status, but in the simple treasures of this moment. Feel the breath moving in and out of your body. This breath is priceless. All the money in the world cannot buy you this breath if your body cannot breathe. Yet here it is, given to you freely, moment after moment. What greater wealth is there than this? Feel the surface supporting you. You are held, supported, safe. This is your shelter right now, in this moment. You are not falling, you are supported. This is enough. Notice the gentle darkness that surrounds you. It is not empty, it is full of rest, full of peace, full of the possibility of sleep. This darkness is your treasure, offering you exactly what you need right now. Feel the simple miracle of being alive. Your heart is beating without you having to think about it. Your body is breathing. Your cells are working. The universe is sustaining you, caring for you in this moment. You are so deeply cared for, even when you don't notice it. This moment, exactly as it is your treasure. Not some future moment when conditions will be perfect. Not some past moment you're nostalgic for. This moment, right now, with all its imperfections, with all its ordinariness, is your wealth. Can you receive it? Can you accept it? Can you rest in the simple, profound abundance of being alive, here, now? You are rich beyond measure, rich in breath, rich in life, rich in this moment of rest, rich in the darkness that invites you to sleep, in the simple miracle of your existence. You are so deeply cared for, even when you don't notice it. This moment, exactly as it is your treasure. Not some future moment when conditions will be perfect. Not some past moment you're nostalgic for. This moment, right now, with all its imperfections, with all its ordinariness, is your wealth. Can you receive it? Can you accept it? Can you rest in the simple, profound abundance of being alive, here, now? You are rich beyond measure, rich in breath, rich in life, rich in this moment of rest, rich in the darkness that invites you to sleep, in the simple miracle of your existence. You are so deeply cared for, even when you don't notice it. This moment, exactly as it is your treasure. Not some future moment when conditions will be perfect. Not some past moment you're nostalgic for. This moment, right now, with all its imperfections, with all its ordinariness, is your wealth. Can you receive it? Can you accept it? Can you rest in the simple, profound abundance of being alive, here, now? You are rich beyond measure, rich in breath, rich in life, rich in this moment of rest, rich in the darkness that invites you to sleep, in the simple miracle of your...
Story 14. The Master of Letting Go. In a monastery high in the mountains of Tibet, there lived an old master named Rinpoche, who was known for his extraordinary peace and freedom. Students came from far and wide to learn from him, but what they found often surprised them. Rinpoche seemed to care about nothing. He had no attachment to the monastery, no attachment to his position as master, no attachment to his reputation. He lived with such lightness, such ease, as if he were a leaf floating on water, moving freely with whatever current came. One year, a serious young monk named Dorje came to study with Rinpoche. Dorje was intensely dedicated to his practice. He followed every rule meticulously. He meditated for hours each day. He studied the texts deeply. But despite all his effort, he felt burdened, heavy, weighed down by the seriousness of his spiritual practice.
He watched Rinpoche and was puzzled. The master seemed to make no effort at all. He meditated when he felt like it, sometimes for hours, sometimes not at all. He read texts when they interested him. He followed the monastery schedule loosely. Yet there was an unmistakable freedom about him, a lightness that Dorje desperately wanted but could not find in his own intense practice. One day Dorje approached Rinpoche. "Master," he said, "I practice so hard, yet I feel so heavy. You practice so lightly, yet you seem so free. What is the secret?" Rinpoche smiled. "Come, let us take a walk." They walked together up the mountain, climbing higher and higher. Dorje, weighted down by his seriousness, his many rules and expectations, found the climb difficult. Rinpoche seemed to float up the path, light as air. As they climbed, Rinpoche began to point out things along the path. "Look at this flower, Dorje. Is it not beautiful?" Dorje looked at the small blue flower growing beside the path. "Yes, master." "Does it worry about being beautiful? Does it try hard to be a flower? Does it have rules about how a proper flower should grow?" "No, master." "And yet it is perfectly itself, effortlessly itself. It blooms because blooming is its nature. It lets go to the rain when rain comes. It lets go to the sun when sun comes. It lets go to the wind when wind comes. And one day it will let go to death itself, dropping its petals and returning to the earth. This is the practice of letting go." They continued climbing. Rinpoche stopped by a stream that tumbled down the mountain. "Watch this water, Dorje." Dorje watched the water flowing over rocks, around obstacles, always moving, always adapting, never sticking to any one place. "The water does not grip the rocks trying to stay in one place," Rinpoche said. "It does not resist the gravity that pulls it down the mountain. It flows. It lets go." "You ask how I can smile when I have nothing. But I ask you, how can you not smile when you have everything? You have breath in your lungs, eyes to see the sky, ears to hear music, legs to walk, hands to feel. You have this moment, this precious, unrepeatable moment of being alive. What greater wealth is there than this?" Sanjay sat in silence for a long time, something shifting deep within him. He had been so focused on acquiring more wealth, more status, more security, that he had completely missed what he already had. He had been so anxious about the future and regretful about the past that he had never truly been present for this moment, this breath, this life unfolding right now. "But," Sanjay said finally, his voice quiet, "you have no security, no roof over your head, no certainty about where your next meal will come from. How can you not worry?" Ananda smiled gently. "I have lived on this corner for 20 years. Not once in those 20 years have I starved. Not once have I been without shelter. Sometimes it is a doorway, sometimes just the open sky, but I have always had somewhere to rest my head. The universe has always provided what I truly needed, though not always what I thought I wanted." Worry is about a future that hasn't happened yet. It is about stories we tell ourselves about what might go wrong. But in this moment, right now, am I okay? Yes. Am I breathing? Yes. Do I have life? Yes. Then this moment is enough. When the next moment comes, it too will be enough. This is the secret of my wealth. I am rich in the only moment that exists, which is now. Sanjay stood slowly, his mind churning with these new ideas. He reached into his purse and pulled out a gold coin, far more than he had ever given to any beggar. He placed it in Ananda's bowl. "Thank you," Sanjay said, "for teaching me true wealth."
Ananda bowed his head. May you discover the treasures you already possess. May you be rich in presence, abundant in gratitude, wealthy in the simple miracle of being alive. Sanjay walked away slowly, seeing the city as if for the first time. He noticed the colors, the bright oranges and reds of the spice seller's wares, the deep blues of the cloth merchant's fabrics, the golden light of the late afternoon sun on the buildings. He heard the sounds, the laughter of children, the calls of vendors, the rhythmic pounding of a blacksmith's hammer. He felt the breeze on his face, cool and refreshing. All of this had been here all along, but he had been too busy worrying about his business to notice it. He had been living like a beggar while believing himself to be rich. Meanwhile, Ananda, owning nothing, had been living like a king. That night, Sanjay sat in his beautiful house, surrounded by his expensive possessions, and practiced what Ananda had taught him. He listened to the sounds, the crickets outside, the rustle of curtains in the breeze. He felt his breath moving in and out. He allowed himself to simply be present with this moment, without planning, without worrying, without trying to be anywhere else. And for the first time in years, Sanjay felt wealthy, truly, deeply wealthy, not because of his possessions, but because of his presence. Not because of what he owned, but because of what he was able to notice, to appreciate, to receive. From that day forward, Sanjay's life changed. He still ran his business, still lived in his fine house, but he was no longer enslaved by these things. He began each day with Ananda's practice, noticing the sky, feeling his breath, listening to the sounds of life around him, appreciating the simple miracle of being alive. And in this practice, he found the peace that had eluded him despite all his wealth. He visited Ananda often, sitting with the beggar on his corner, learning more about the art of being present, of being grateful, of being rich in the only moment that matters, now. As you rest now, can you discover your own wealth? Not in possessions or achievements or status, but in the simple treasures of this moment. Feel the breath moving in and out of your body. This breath is priceless. All the money in the world cannot buy you this breath if your body cannot breathe. Yet here it is, given to you freely, moment after moment. What greater wealth is there than this? Feel the surface supporting you. You are held, supported, safe. This is your shelter right now, in this moment. You are not falling, you are supported. This is enough. Notice the gentle darkness that surrounds you. It is not empty, it is full, full of rest, full of peace, full of the possibility of sleep. This darkness is your treasure, offering you exactly what you need right now. Feel the simple miracle of being alive. Your heart is beating without you having to think about it. Your body is breathing. Your cells are working. The universe is sustaining you, caring for you in this moment. You are so deeply cared for, even when you don't notice it. This moment, exactly as it is your treasure. Not some future moment when conditions will be perfect, not some past moment you're nostalgic for. This moment, right now, with all its imperfection, with all its ordinariness, is your wealth. Can you receive it? Can you accept it? Can you rest in the simple, profound abundance of being alive, here, now? You are rich beyond measure, rich in breath, rich in life, rich in this moment of rest, rich in the darkness that invites you to sleep, rich in the simple miracle of your existence. Let your
Story 14. The Master of Letting Go. In a monastery high in the mountains of Tibet, there lived an old master named Rinpoche, who was known for his extraordinary peace and freedom. Students came from far and wide to learn from him, but what they found often surprised them. Rinpoche seemed to care about nothing. He had no attachment to the monastery, no attachment to his position as master, no attachment to his reputation. He lived with such lightness, such ease, as if he were a leaf floating on water, moving freely with whatever current came. One year, a serious young monk named Dorje came to study with Rinpoche. Dorje was intensely dedicated to his practice. He followed every rule meticulously. He meditated for hours each day. He studied the texts deeply. But despite all his effort, he felt burdened, heavy, weighed down by the seriousness of his spiritual practice. He watched Rinpoche and was puzzled. The master seemed to make no effort at all. He meditated when he felt like it, sometimes for hours, sometimes not at all. He read texts when they interested him. He followed the monastery schedule loosely. Yet there was an unmistakable freedom about him, a lightness that Dorje desperately wanted but could not find in his own intense practice. One day, Dorje approached Rinpoche. "Master," he said, "I practice so hard, yet I feel so heavy. You practice so lightly, yet you seem so free. What is the secret?" Rinpoche smiled. "Come, let us take a walk." They walked together up the mountain, climbing higher and higher. Dorje, weighted down by his seriousness, his many rules and expectations, found the climb difficult. Rinpoche seemed to float up the path, light as air. As they climbed, Rinpoche began to point out things along the path. "Look at this flower, Dorje. Is it not beautiful?" Dorje looked at the small blue flower growing beside the path. "Yes, master." "Does it worry about being beautiful? Does it try hard to be a flower? Does it have rules about how a proper flower should grow?" "No, master." "And yet it is perfectly itself, effortlessly itself. It blooms because blooming is its nature. It lets go to the rain when rain comes. It lets go to the sun when sun comes. It lets go to the wind when wind comes. And one day it will let go to death itself, dropping its petals and returning to the earth. This is the practice of letting go." They continued climbing. Rinpoche stopped by a stream that tumbled down the mountain. "Watch this water, Dorje." Dorje watched the water flowing over rocks, around obstacles, always moving, always adapting, never sticking to any one place. "The water does not grip the rocks, trying to stay in one place," Rinpoche said. "It does not resist the gravity that pulls it down the mountain. It flows, it lets go, constantly lets go, of every rock, every eddy, every place it has been. And because it lets go, it moves freely. Because it releases, it flows." They reached the top of the mountain and sat down on a flat rock, looking out over the vast valley below. The view was breathtaking, mountains stretching to the horizon, clouds drifting past, eagles soaring on the wind. "Tell me, Dorje," Rinpoche said, "what are you holding on to that makes you so heavy?" Dorje thought about this. "I'm holding on to my practice, master, my rules, my discipline, my efforts to become enlightened." "And what else?" "I'm holding on to my image of myself as a good monk, my reputation among the other students, my progress, or lack thereof, my past mistakes, my future hopes." "And what else?" Dorje continued, and as he spoke he realized how much he was gripping, how tightly he was holding on to ideas about who he should be, how his practice should look, what enlightenment should feel like. He was holding opinions about other students, judgments about himself, attachments to certain states of mind, aversions to others. "I am holding on to so much," Dorje said, feeling the weight of it all. "Yes," Rinpoche said gently. "You were like a man trying to climb a mountain while carrying a boulder on his back. The boulder is made of all these things you are gripping, your rules, your self-image, your ideas, your judgments, your expectations. No wonder you feel heavy." "But master, if I let go of my practice, my rules, my efforts, won't I just become lazy? Won't I lose my way?" Rinpoche laughed. Does the flower become lazy when it stops trying to be a flower? Does the water become lost when it stops gripping the rocks? Letting go is not the same as giving up. It is surrendering to what is natural, to what flows. "Watch," Rinpoche said. He picked up a small stone and held it in his palm. "This stone, I can grip it tightly." He made a fist around the stone, his knuckles white with tension. "Or I can hold it lightly." He opened his hand, the stone resting easily in his open palm. "In both cases I have the stone, but which way is more relaxed? Which way can I hold it longer without fatigue?" Dorje saw the teaching. "The open hand, Master." Yes, this is how to hold your practice, not with a tight grip, not with desperate clinging, but with an open hand. Practice, yes. Meditate, yes. Follow the way, yes. But hold it all lightly. Be willing to let it go at any moment. Be willing to let go of your ideas about practice, your expectations about progress, even your attachment to enlightenment itself. "But then what remains?" Dorje asked. "If I let go of everything, what is left?" Rinpoche spread his arms wide, gesturing to the vast space around them. "This, just this. The wind on your face, the sky above, the earth beneath, your breath moving in and out. This pure experience of being alive, right here, right now. This is what remains when you let go of everything else. And this is enough. This is everything." Over the following months, Dorje practiced letting go. At first, it was terrifying. When he let go of his tight grip on his meditation practice, he feared he would lose all discipline. But instead, he found that his meditation became more natural, more joyful. He sat not because he should, but because he wanted to. Not to achieve something, but simply to be present. When he let go of his self-image as a serious practitioner, he feared others would think less of him, but instead he found he could laugh more, play more, be more human and less rigid. And ironically, the other students seemed to appreciate him more, not less. One day, Dorje was washing his bowl after the morning meal. He was completely present with the simple act, the warm water, the smooth ceramic, the circular motion of washing. He was holding the practice lightly, not trying to do it perfectly, not thinking about what it meant or whether it counted as meditation, just washing a bowl. And in that moment something released, the last grip, the last holding, the last sense of a separate self trying to achieve something. There was just washing, just water, just this. No Dorje trying to be enlightened, no enlightenment to achieve, just this simple, complete, perfect moment of washing a bowl. Tears streamed down his face. He had found what he had been seeking, not by gripping harder, but by letting go completely. Later that day, he found Rinpoche in the garden. "Master," he said, bowing deeply, "I understand now. The secret is letting go." Rinpoche smiled. "Good, now let go of that understanding too." Dorje laughed, understanding the deeper teaching. Even insights must be held lightly. Even understanding must not be gripped. Everything, absolutely everything, is held in an open hand, ready to be released. "Yes, Master, even this." "Even this," Rinpoche confirmed. "Let go and let go of letting go. Hold nothing, grasp nothing. Be free as the wind, flowing as water, natural as a flower blooming. This is the way." Dorje lived many more years at the monastery, eventually becoming a teacher himself. Students who came to him seeking the secret of freedom would find him remarkably light, remarkably free. When they asked his secret, he would sometimes hold out his hand, palm open, and say simply, "Let go." As you rest now, what are you holding on to? What are you gripping that makes you heavy, that prevents you from flowing into sleep? Perhaps you're holding on to thoughts about tomorrow, gripping worries about the future. Can you let them go? Just for now, just for this moment, release your grip on tomorrow. It will still be there when you wake. You don't need to hold it all night. Perhaps you're holding on to the day that passed, replaying conversations, regretting things said or unsaid, analyzing what happened.
Can you let that go? The past has already happened. You cannot change it by holding on to it. Release it into the darkness and let it rest. Perhaps you're holding on to expectations about how sleep should come, judging yourself for still being awake, trying to force rest to happen. Can you even let go of this? Sleep comes when you stop trying to make it happen. Rest flows when you stop resisting what is. Open your hands. If they're clenched, let them relax. If they're gripping the covers, soften your hold. Let your hands be open, palms up, releasing everything. Open your jaw. If it's tight, let it release. Let your teeth separate slightly. Let go of whatever you're holding.
Story 15. The Silent Teacher. In a remote monastery in the mountains of Japan, there was a monk who had not spoken for 30 years. His name was Kon, though few remembered it, as he was simply called the Silent One by the other monks. Kon had taken a vow of silence 3 decades earlier, not as a punishment or ascetic practice, but as a choice. He had realized that his words often created more confusion than clarity, more separation than connection. So he had stopped speaking and found that silence was a more eloquent teacher than any words could be. Despite his silence, or perhaps because of it, Kon was deeply loved by everyone in the monastery. His presence was calming. When someone was troubled, they would often seek out Kon, sitting with him in silence, and somehow leave feeling lighter, clearer, more at peace. One autumn, a new student arrived at the monastery. His name was Kenji, and he was full of questions. Questions about Buddhism, about meditation, about the nature of reality, about the path to enlightenment. He had come to the monastery hoping to find answers. The abbot assigned Kenji to work with Kon in the garden. Kenji was disappointed. He had hoped to study with a teacher who could answer his questions, not a silent monk who would teach him nothing. On the first day, Kenji worked beside Kon in silence. They raked leaves, the autumn foliage falling constantly from the maple trees. Kenji's mind churned with questions he wanted to ask but couldn't. The silence felt oppressive to him. After an hour, Kenji couldn't contain himself. "Master Kon," he said, "I have so many questions. It seems a waste for me to work with you when you cannot answer them." Kon looked at Kenji with gentle eyes and smiled. Then he returned to his raking, the bamboo rake making soft whispers as it gathered leaves. Kenji felt frustrated, but continued working. They raked in silence for another hour. Then Kon stopped, set down his rake, and sat on a bench under a maple tree. He gestured for Kenji to sit beside him. They sat together, saying nothing. Kenji's mind was noisy with thoughts, with questions, with judgments about this waste of time. But Kon simply sat, his face peaceful, his body relaxed, completely present. A leaf fell from the tree above them, spinning gently as it descended, landing softly on Kon's shoulder. The old monk looked at it with such tender attention, such gentle appreciation, as if this single leaf were the most precious thing in the world. Then he picked it up delicately and held it in his palm, examining its colors, brilliant orange fading to yellow at the edges, veins of deep red running through it. Kon held the leaf out to Kenji, offering it. Kenji took the leaf and looked at it, really looked at it, and for the first time he saw a leaf not as a concept, not as autumn, not as impermanence, but this specific, unique, unrepeatable expression of life. This particular leaf, with its particular pattern of color, its particular shape, its particular story of growing green in spring, photosynthesizing through summer, and now releasing its chlorophyll to reveal these hidden colors.
Something shifted in Kenji. For a moment, his mind stopped its constant questioning and commentary. There was just this leaf, this moment, this seeing. Koun smiled, seeming to sense the shift, and returned to his raking. Kenji joined him, but something was different. The work felt less like a waste of time and more like, what? Meditation? Prayer? Simply being fully present with raking leaves? Days passed. Kenji and Koun worked together each morning in the garden. They planted bulbs for the spring, preparing the soil, placing each bulb carefully, covering it gently. They repaired a section of fence, holding posts steady for each other, working in perfect coordination without words. They swept the paths, gathered firewood, tended the small koi pond. Through all of this, Koun never spoke, but Kenji began to realize that the silent monk was teaching him constantly, teaching him through the quality of attention he brought to each task, teaching him through his gentleness with all living things. Even insects were carefully moved aside rather than crushed, teaching him through his presence, his complete acceptance of each moment exactly as it was. One day, they were sitting together during a break, drinking tea that Koun had prepared with his characteristic care and attention. Kenji had stopped trying to fill the silence with talk. He was learning to be comfortable in the quiet space between them. A young monk walked past, clearly agitated, his face troubled. Koun raised his hand in greeting, and the young monk stopped, hesitated, then came and sat with them. Koun poured him tea. They sat in silence, the three of them. Kenji watched as the agitated monk gradually relaxed. His breathing slowed, his shoulders dropped, his furrowed brow smoothed. About 20 minutes, the monk bowed to Koun in gratitude and left, his face peaceful. He didn't say anything, Kenji observed quietly, speaking more to himself than to Koun. Koun looked at Kenji with nodding, warm eyes of recognition. Kenji continued, thinking aloud. I came here with so many questions, seeking answers in words. But what if the answers aren't in words? What if they're in silence, in presence, in simply being with what is? Koun placed his hand briefly over his heart, then gestured to the garden around them, to the sky above, to the tea between them. Everything is the answer, his gesture seemed to say. This moment, this breath, this presence, this is what you've been seeking. Months passed. Kenji's need for verbal answers diminished. He found that the silence Koun offered was not empty, but full of presence, full of peace, full of a teaching that went deeper than words could reach. One winter morning, as they were sweeping snow from the paths, Kenji had a realization. All his questions about the nature of reality, about enlightenment, about the meaning of life, they hadn't been answered in the way he expected. They had been dissolved. By being fully present with each moment, by bringing complete attention to simple tasks, by sitting in silence with an open heart, the questions themselves had gradually lost their urgency, their grip. The question, what is enlightenment, was replaced by simply being here, sweeping snow, feeling the cold air, seeing the white expanse of the garden transformed by the snowfall. This was enough. This was everything. Kenji stopped sweeping and looked at Koun. The old monk looked back, and in his eyes Kenji saw recognition, acknowledgement, understanding. Koun bowed slightly, honoring the realization. Kenji bowed in return, tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for teaching me through your silence." Koun smiled his gentle smile and returned to sweeping snow. And so, dear listener, we come to the end of our journey through these gentle teachings. But the journey never truly ends. Each moment is an opportunity to practice what these stories have shared: presence, acceptance, letting go, gratitude, simplicity, silence. As you continue resting, know that you are held by the same wisdom that held the monks in their temples, the hermits in their caves, the beggars on their corners. You are supported by the same earth, breathing the same air, part of the same vast, interconnected whole. There is nothing you need to do right now, nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to become. You can simply rest, exactly as you are, in exactly this moment. Let sleep come when it comes, and if it doesn't come yet, let that be okay too. Rest in the peace of acceptance. Rest in the fullness of silence. Rest in the simple miracle of being alive. May you be at peace. May you be at rest. May you sleep deeply and wake refreshed. May all beings everywhere find the peace and rest they seek. Breathe gently. Rest completely. Sleep well. All is well. All is peace. All is rest.